maybe the sensors of intelligence are themselves a developmental framework, and that they arise in a developmental sequence. Object relational affects are true, but they're oriented to different material than this idea of nurturing and then guiding / protecting. What I think that the object relational affects are actually in relation to is not these abstract functions like nurturing and protecting and guiding, but the milieu of each of the sensors, so that we can be attached, frustrated, or feel rejected by sensation itself, or gaze itself, or symbol / orientation.
The big hormone enneagram.
I'm John Lekovich, 415, sexual self-pres, 458 trifix.
I'm David Gray, self-pres sexual, 9 with 1 wing, 974 trifix.
What up, it's Emeka. I'm an 8-wing 7, sexual self-pres with 854 fixes.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I'm a 3-wing 4, self-pres social, a 369 trifix.
Hi, I'm Alexandra. I'm a social self-preservation 9-wing 1, 963 trifix.
If you like or hate us, make sure you go like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and make sure you leave us a review.
All right.
So what the hell are we doing today?
We have
Josh
lovely,
is coming live from his facility.
lovely 3
Psych-
boys.
My
Compound.
facility, yeah, my
Psych
compound.
ward facility to drop wisdom on us. Very sterilized wisdom is coming.
That's
from
right.
his facility.
Yeah, lab coat.
Or coffee.
Why aren't
Lab
you
coat
dressed
is-
in a white lab coat? Why are you wearing flannel? That's not
You know,
on
I've been
brand.
thinking about our conversation around how to integrate my sexual instincts, and I was thinking probably the best way to do it is to start wearing a white lab coat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's true too.
You got it.
But only if there are
Yes.
handcuffs hidden inside of it.
Purity is what we're going for here.
Oh.
I wanted to actually, before we start, or as we start, I wanted to make one redaction or amendment to something I said in the spiral dynamics episode.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say that it's that I think that I listened back to it, and I think that I somewhat was unfair to the blue meme of spiral dynamics, and I realized as I was listening to it that I have a prejudice against blue.
What's wrong? What's wrong with prejudice? This is a prejudice podcast that we're on here.
Well, let me just be really clear what I mean. I was using words like authoritarian and fundamentalist and stuff, and I think that's the shadow side of blue, but
Mm-hmm.
I think blue is more fairly represented with words like traditionalist,
Mm-hmm.
and blue is motivated by things like a duty to, for example, God, country, the group, these kinds of things. And the healthy form of blue is
Disgusting.
is like, what makes, society sort of congeal together, for example. So there are a lot of positive things about each of the memes, and they're important in a certain sense to integrate them all as you develop. But of course, they all have shadows, and that's sort of what I was over focusing on for blue.
Okay.
Welcome to Big Hormone Enneagram. We are back with Spiral Wizard Josh. Before we get into it, please buy my book and review it. I've been getting some hate reviews lately from
Oh, for real?
Yeah, from people who I know who they are after
Nice.
I've typed them, and with types they didn't want to hear.
Oh, nice.
You can look it up. There's a very lengthy 1-star review from James, and then there is a very rambly. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's got 3-star reviews, and they both after I gave them feedback on their type they didn't like, they hate reviewed. So if you could review however it goes, reviews go a long way for a no-name author like myself. So please do that. I have been doing a study group based on going like section by section through my book. You can find that through my website, johnlekovich.com. But I'm offering the first 3 chapters, which is like several hours. I don't know, like 16 classes, which are 2 hours each with practice, discussion, and analysis for like a package deal of like, $175. So that sounds like a lot, but I think it's actually really good. It's like a whole course basically.
Yeah.
And then Josh and I are starting an Enneagram school called the EnneagramSchool.com, and we have our first course coming up on
this week.
This week, as of recording, was it 19th? Is that when we have?
Yeah, January 19th.
Yeah, 4-part class on focusing on this model of the developmental view of the sensors that I think gives a lot of new language perspective on type, understanding it, and practicing with it.
All right. DAA, Dark Arts Academy. We're gaining an experiential fluency with the Enneagram with the practice of typing. A lot of the concepts that we learn here, how to put them into practice experientially in real time. So this week, I believe we have an episode coming out looking at the instinct stacking and fashion. We looked at Habib Nurmagomedov, MMA fighter, a week before, and we're going to be looking at John Malkovich coming up soon. And if you would like to get some help gaining some clarity with your self-typing, you can get typed by us at Enneagrammer. You can get all this information at Enneagrammer.com.
It's also my trifix booklet with an intro by John, which is the definitive trifix information in all of the world. Please purchase.
The only source.
And then, Alexandra?
I'm going to wait for a little bit. I feel like I need to take in a little more before I reopen. So I'm just going to wait a little bit.
You're going to wait on what?
Oh, astrology stuff.
That's right.
God, so annoying. Okay.
Tell us about what it will be.
We're going to...
And maybe where we can book you and reach you and what you charge also. That'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll just have to be patient. Sorry.
What about the website that they can find more information?
Yeah.
Ms.
Or an email.
Just wait.
We're just asking. I mean, no pressure.
Is there a website address?
And when it's going to be ready, how much is it going to
be? Literally getting hot.
I was going to say you look very red.
Yeah.
Where can they give you feedback on?
No, there's no feedback, nothing. I'm hidden for a while.
Put in requests for what we want to see.
For what we'd like to see.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
This podcast continuing its toxicity of bullying nines.
You're just delaying things, all of you.
The last thing you should ever fucking say on this podcast is I'm not ready for that. I'm going to wait.
Oh my God. What other option did I have? You guys were going to push me anyway, so I might as well just be honest.
Where are you even thinking that you are right now?
Oh my God. Anyway, Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. I've got a few plugs. I'll plug the school again. I'm really excited about the class. Also, just launched the Enneagram Expressions Library.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, good.
Right.
Which is very cool. Yeah. It's a visual, interactive way to interact with the Enneagrammer celebrity database, and also includes a bunch of other resources like art and poetry and music and quotes and things like that by type. And my hope for it was that it would be a resource for not just to be able to actually see visually who are all the threes that have been typed officially out there in the world and organized by instinctual stacking or trifix. You can actually toggle through different menu or different views of them, so you can see type and wing, instinctual stacking, all that stuff. So I wanted that just to be a nice visual resource, but I also was hoping that it would be a good resource for people who are leading retreats or teaching the Enneagram to go find both accurate typings as well as resources like poems and things like that that people use in retreats. When I've taught retreats, that's my favorite part, is the poems. So that's out, and it's free. It's enneagramexpressions.com. You can go check that out. What else? I am also doing the podcast What It's Like to Be You, which is Enneagram interviews, and I just released one with Emma Scott, Social Self-Pres 6-Wing 7, 612 Trifix, and that was really great. Got a couple more coming down the pike soon.
Cool.
I'd say a few things about the Enneagram school that I didn't say, because
Sure, yeah.
I say things in a stupid way.
First of all, please check out our website and sign up for our email list. That's where we're going to be announcing future classes and stuff like that. The Enneagram School, for us, I think it serves a few functions. First, one of the voids that I think it fills in the Enneagram world is a place that offers a long-term community in which you can actually bring the content of your life and work through your stuff. It's not just, we're not just going to offer, we are going to offer, online courses and kind of retreats and things like that eventually, but the kind of the life pulse of the school, we're hoping to be a community of sincere inner workers. And so we're going to hopefully be organizing some kind of community gatherings where people can actually work through, what's going on in their lives, and through the lens of the Enneagram and through, things like that. So we're also interested in having, this is sort of future plans for the school. We'd like to have things like purchasable, succinct, introductory content to the Enneagram. One of the things that, like, Enneagrammer has amazing content, and it's kind of like loose and conversational in the format of like podcasts and Dark Arts Academy and stuff. But it's like, you want to just learn the Enneagram from the ground up. Like, what is the structure of the Enneagram? We're going to start creating content that is like easily digestible and sequential.
Yeah, like I get approached sometimes by like an organization that like wants me to teach the Enneagram, and but they like don't know what they're asking for. And then in the process of just like wanting me to like teach their team, I'm like, well, it's not just 1 hour presentation or something like that. It's like, so to have things that are like already planned out offerings that where someone can get a formal education on the Enneagram, to kind of fill in the void of a lot of these Enneagram certifying schools that are not decent and that rely on one technique or another too much, like panels or something like that, where everybody's mistyped.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to build on that and, draw on y'all fools to participate as well in whatever comes up. Like,
definitely.
Josh and I just brainstormed a couple things, future offerings that on the horizon that are pretty cool, and so we're excited about it. So today we are going to talk a little bit about this developmental view of the centers. This is a lot of Josh's original material, and Josh was here wizarding his spiral a couple episodes ago, and so we're going to continue to look at this, not at the spiral, but at development and how it relates to our understanding of type. And this is kind of what we'll be focusing on this course that we're going to be doing. But that'll be more focused specifically on how these things show up in the types and fleshing out the types from this point of view. Is there anything you want to say about it, Josh?
Yeah, sure. We were talking about what to kind of reveal in this podcast episode versus what to teach in the class. And the class and the school in general is going to be really oriented to inner work. And so the class is going to be largely practice focused and inquiry focused and self-introspection focused. And so the class is going to be an environment in which you can actually use this material to look within and discover more about yourself in the context of a community of people who are doing the same thing. And what we're hoping, I think, to talk about today is just like what the model is and how the model came about and what it's revealing and what the edges of the model are and what's still not answered and these kinds of things.
Yeah, so I mean, I think especially in just doing this podcast, I mean, it's become clear that what the Enneagram types are is the intersection of the centers of intelligence and the object relational affects. And it's just like you just put those together, those two beams of light, and where the prisms kind of overlap is our Enneagram type. And so Josh, how did this model come about and blah blah blah?
So yeah, the model, or how did the model come about?
Yeah, like, all right, so what is this? What model are we talking about, and why is it useful? How did it come about? What was missing, and what came before, and what does it contribute?
Yeah, wow.
8 questions for you, Josh. Real easy. Good luck.
Okay. So taking a breath. Like, the punchline of the model is that I think that the centers of intelligence arise in a developmental sequence. And I think basically as an infant, you start basically as just a body, and then you develop a heart and you develop a mind. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that in a little bit. Okay, So we have been, over the last year or two, and especially I think with DAA, really honing in on the fact that as John was saying, the fundamental thing is the center and the object relational affect. And that's fundamental for typing, and it's also fundamental for being able to work with yourself. And Courtney's episodes on object relations were like pretty revelatory for, I think, a huge, just for us in general, and also just for this community. It was like kind of this amazing clarifying thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking a lot about the presentation of object relations from the point of view of object relations. Object relations has this very complicated history in psychology, and there is not actually an object relations theory in psychology. There are many different object relations theories and different theorists who have proposed different schools of thought with object relations. So it's very difficult to talk about object relations theory as a single monolithic thing. But the way that I think Don Riso and Russ Hudson put it together in the Enneagram language is that there are the 3 object relational affects: attachment, frustration, rejection, in relation to 3 possible things: the nurturing function, the protecting/guiding function, or both together. And there's something about the nurturing and then protecting/guiding and then both triad that just wasn't sitting right with me, for a lot of reasons. First of all, and I'm actually, I don't have my Riso Hudson material in front of me, so I don't remember if their original presentation was protecting/guiding, but certainly in the Enneagram world at large, I've seen those 2 words lumped together, and that seemed like 2 separate things. And it also seems strange to create a third option by taking 2 things and lumping them together. The Enneagram is a fundamentally triadic framework, and so there was just something kind of off about that to me. The other thing is that object relations, from this point of view, nurturing and protecting/guiding, felt to me like developmentally, like sequentially wrong in the development of infants. Like, and what I mean by that is, so let me say it this way: like, nurturing is important to an infant from the get-go, but guiding isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Guiding doesn't become relevant to an infant until they have the cognitive apparatus to be guided.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have a formulation with this object relations paradigm that, like, a 3 is said to be attached to the nurturing function. And so you could imagine that, according to this framework, that the personality type of 3 constellates very, very early, as soon as there's a relationship with the nurturing function established. But type 6 then is sort of on hold until the guiding function comes about and they can receive it, and then they develop that relationship. And so it's like, basically, this framework is sort of, if you take it all the way to the end, what it's saying is that 3 constellates before 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have this weird thing where there's a double relationship. So like a type 4 is frustrated with both the nurturing and protective / guiding function. And so you have this formulation where it's basically half of 4 is constellated, and then the other half gets constellated later when the guiding function is relevant. And just developmentally, it wasn't really sitting with me. Like, it doesn't click. There were other things too about it. Like, so one other thing was in Courtney's episode, she did this really brilliant move where she was talking about the rejection types, where she, like, I had always struggled to understand what it means that 2 is rejected by the protective function or guiding function. And she did this brilliant move where she said basically the 2, like, what the guiding protection function is meant for is that when you are guided and protected well, that instills in you a sense of your own independence, your own independent operating. Mm-hmm. So you can guide yourself, you can protect yourself. And the idea is that because the 2 is missed in that function, then they slosh over and over-identify with their nurturing function, and they don't develop their independence. And I was sitting and thinking about that, and I don't think that the reverse is, or the mirror of that with 8, it works. Because what the nurturing function is for, like, the result of being well nurtured, is a sense of your own self-worth and confidence. And I don't see a lot of 8s that have struggles with that.
Right.
And so the mirror, like, the symmetry isn't there. And then there's this idea that 5 is double rejected, and so it doesn't feel like a person. On the one hand, I think that might be experientially true for 5s, but I don't know, just something about it just wasn't fully sitting right with me. So I was sitting with this inner tension about object relations not quite working for me as a framework from this point of view, but I was also realizing the attachment, frustration, rejection affects are very true. I mean, they're experientially true for me, they're observable. And so I started to think, well, maybe there's something else going on that is actually object relational affects are true, but they're oriented to different material than this idea of nurturing and then guiding / protecting. So call that paragraph 1. Paragraph 2 is, I've been like reading a lot about human development and developmental frameworks, and that includes spiral dynamics. That includes the constructive ego development theory of Susan Reuter, which I'm really obsessed with, and a lot of Ken Wilber stuff. And basically, especially from the Ken Wilber stuff, what I was learning is that the nature of the universe, all things, is what he calls holonic. And that means that things are kind of Russian doll nested within each other. Let me explain what I mean. So like matter is built in the following way. Like you have atoms, which are then assembled into molecules. So molecules are made of atoms, but transcend atoms and have properties that are emergent that can't be predicted based on just the qualities of the atoms that they're comprised of. Like you have 2 hydrogens and oxygen, that you put them together, and all of a sudden it's wet. And then you have molecules that form cells, and cells that form organisms, and organisms that form societies. And so you have this Russian doll nested kind of concentric circle structure of matter. And one of Ken Wilber's arguments is that consciousness is structured in the same way. So you have like impulse and sensation and emotion and cognition and vision logic and all these other paradigm awareness, systemic awareness, these kinds of things. So as I was reading that stuff, I started making the connection. I was like, wait a minute, that sounds, just that sensation, emotion, cognition piece sounds a lot like body, heart, mind. And so I started thinking that maybe the sensors of intelligence are themselves a developmental framework. Mm-hmm. And that they arise in a developmental sequence. And so that seems to me to be true. And here's how I think it works. So basically, as an infant, like in the first week of life, you're basically just a body. You can't even distinguish between objects in your environment, yes, your eyes are blurry, and you're just, all of a sudden, boom, you're in the world, and you are plopped into a sensory surrounds that is more intense, more painful, more overwhelming than the womb was. And so I think that what happens the first like week or so of life is a kind of nostalgia for the womb. And the existential dilemma arises of like, how do you protect yourself from sensory overwhelm? And that's fundamentally the concern of the body center. How do you create boundaries? And then
that's why all 9s are basically babies.
Yes.
But also
infant.
But also
every day.
Yeah,
we can get into this too. But
overwhelming.
2 babies here on the call. Thank you for joining us, babies.
You're welcome.
Love you, baby.
Love you too, baby.
So we can unpack and texturize this, but I'm going to just give the whole like.
Yeah. We're just going to interrupt with dumb comments.
That's good.
As we always do here.
So around a month, an infant's eyes are constellate, and they're able to actually make eye contact, and they develop the motor skill to actually be able to track things with their eyes before they can even control where their eyes are going. And then human faces become interesting to them, and they start making like meaningful. If you ever hold like a 5-week-old or 6-week-old infant, which I just did because my friend just had a baby, they are fascinated with your face. Like they just look at your face for minutes and minutes at a time before they tire out.
That's disgusting.
I think what happened, what's going on is, this is like basically the development of the heart center, where an infant is realizing that other things are paying attention to me. I'm being paid attention to. And attention is important because when I'm being paid attention to, my needs are getting met. When I'm not being paid attention to, they're not being met. And also sometimes when I'm being paid attention to, I'm being misread. Like I'm hungry, but mom's changing my diaper instead. And so this idea of attunement becomes really important. And on some pre-verbal, pre-cognitive awareness, there is an awareness that arises that my inner experience is not matching what people are seeing. And so the fundamental concern of the heart center arises, which is how do we get the right kind of attention? Mm-hmm. And then later,
that already hurts.
yeah. So later, infants develop something called object permanence, which is like, the basic idea is that when the ball rolls onto the couch, before they have object permanence, they can't even hold the symbolic representation of the ball. And so it's as if the ball has disappeared altogether. It ceases to exist. But when they develop object permanence, they can understand that the ball is still there, and they might actually go look under the couch. The primary object is usually parents, mom, and so it's like, I know that mom still exists, she's just in the other room. But the point is that when I have object permanence, then all of a sudden I am basically born into symbolic reality, where my inner world is now populated with symbolic abstractions from concrete objects that I can ponder and contemplate when those things are not in my presence. And that is the birth of the mental center.
So what you're saying there is that object constancy is being able to hold, in a sense, a symbolic representation of another person, right?
Correct.
And so, that's the mental center.
Right.
And that's the mental center.
And that opens up a whole world of being able to hold mental representations of things and having an independent existence, whether you're observing them or not. And having to orient to all, from the level of the body sensation, you're bombarded with sensory inputs and having to organize those. And so from the mental center point of view, you're bombarded with potential symbolic objects and having to navigate your way through those. Correct?
Correct. And so a new existential dilemma arises. So we've had two existential dilemmas. At the level of the body center, it's how do I protect myself from sensory overwhelm? At the heart center, it's how do I get the right kind of attention? And then in the mental center, the arrival into the mental center and symbolic reality is basically the infant's first experience of infinity. It's like, well, if the ball is still under the couch, what else is under the couch? What's behind the couch? What's behind that couch? And also
couches all the way down.
Couches all the way down, baby. And you also, symbols represent things that are either dangerous to me or nourishing to me. Like mom's in the other room. And she's a symbol that I'm fundamentally oriented to. Or like, I know that there are carrots in the fridge, even though I can't see them. And so, basically the question arises, how do I map reality? How do I navigate reality? How do I hold a map of reality that orients me away from danger and towards nourishment in my head? And that is the fundamental concern or existential dilemma of the mental center. And the final kind of punchline of this is that my sense is that, actually, let me get at it this way. So the body center is the aspect of us that is oriented that receives sensory impact and also gives sensory impact. The heart center is the aspect of us that receives the gaze of others or attention and also gives it. And the mental center is that which receives not just symbol, but also orientation from exogenous sources and also orients ourselves and other people. And what I think that the object relational affects are actually in relation to is not these abstract functions like nurturing and protecting and guiding, but the milieu of each of the centers, so that we can be attached, frustrated, or feel rejected by sensation itself, or gaze itself, or symbol/orientation.
So now you know the Enneagram. So we're done. This is it.
So that's the skeleton of the framework.
So this is how we can build trifixes as well. Like I'm trapped in attachment to sensory, symbol, and gaze. Or
yes.
Yeah, in attachment. Okay, God, that's horrible.
So so first of all, one of the things that this clarified for me, I've been thinking about the centers a lot because for me, the centers have been the least clear and most woo-woo aspect of the Enneagram. Like when people talk about, the Enneagram's based on the body, heart, mind. If you're a person who's oriented to like science or whatever, it's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Right.
And I've also, I remember when I was a very early Enneagram teacher, I gave a retreat and someone asked me once, like when you say the body center, does that mean like, are you actually talking about the body? Like this like sensation impact? And I was like, yeah, but I was really struck by that question because when we talk about the intelligence of the body, like nobody knows what the fuck we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, like what is the intelligence of the body? What is it oriented to? What is it? What does it mean? And the word heart even is so saturated with cultural and spiritual kind of mumbo jumbo. It's like it's a very, it's a very rich and juicy word, and it's a word that belongs in poems and spiritual connectedness and yoga retreats and stuff like that. But from the point of view of like rigorous psychology, it's a very difficult word to pin down.
Yeah.
And so I think that what this framework is doing for me is clarifying what the fuck we mean when we talk about the sensors. What are the sensors? And I also think that from this point of view, this is why trifix is true. Because everyone goes through these developmental stages. Yeah. Everyone starts as a body. Everyone has a heart. Everyone gets to mind. And somehow, and I don't have an answer for this, but somehow along the way, we get psychologically anchored or even trapped, you might say, in one of those layers. Fixated in one of those layers more than the others. So like for me as a 3, as a heart type, what being a heart type means is being psychologically anchored in the layer of gaze. It's like I can't not be oriented to how you are paying attention to me and how attention is being paid to everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that explains John. And his harsh, intense critique on how everyone perceives everything.
Yeah.
I don't know what you mean.
Gaze.
That was just one other piece, and I would love for you guys to ask some questions to kind of open this up. But one of the things that has helped me texturize and get clear on what this framework is really saying is that a lot of the interviews I've been doing helped me question this protective guiding / nurturing kind of framework. Like, for example, when I did the interview with Alex, the one, she was talking about how she can't even begin to sit down to write until she dusts and organizes her shelf.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not frustration with the protecting or guiding function. That's frustration with the sensory impact of something in her environment. Mm-hmm. She can't settle until, settling. And then when I talked to Joseph, I was struck, like, just how much disdain he has for things. It's not because he's not frustrated with a protective. I mean, I get the 4 being double frustrated as a framework, but it's like frustration with a protective function doesn't really work for me there. What he's frustrated with is the way people are paying attention to anything. It's frustration with attention itself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So let's see. I want to talk about trifix more clearly from this point of view. And I don't know if that requires breaking anything down before we get into that, because, we're introducing, all right, like rejection, like maybe say something about like what's rejection, frustration, and attachment on the level of sensation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because that's kind of like, I mean, rejection and sensation, what, so
right.
We don't have to go through all the types or something because you got to pay for a fucking class. But
well, I think it could be fun as like a sampler to just go through it with like all of us. Like David and I trapped in attachment with sensation. What does that mean? I don't know. Anyway, go ahead.
Let's do the body center. Yeah, this is good. This will be good. So,
talk about me.
Trapped in a womb.
This is an asterisk, but I just wanted to put this one other, because I want to like do my best to put a nail in the coffin of the previous kind of construction of object relations relating to those functions. The other thing about the double frustration thing was I was thinking like, okay, if one is frustrated with protecting and then as a result of that starts making all the rules and asserting all the rules upon everyone else, and if 7 is frustrated with nurturing and then therefore takes it upon themselves to go and get whatever they need, then 4 should be a composite of the two of them if they're double frustrated, and they're not. There's something totally different.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
we are different.
Yeah.
You're the same.
So annoying.
It's, okay, so let's the emergence, the whole on of 4.
Let's do the body sensor. Okay, so here's the basic idea. As an infant, in the first week of life, you didn't choose to be here, and you are now plopped into a sensory surround that is extremely overwhelming and doesn't hold you in the attuned way that the womb did.
Agree.
So, yeah. And so
very strong agree. 5 out of 5.
Rage.
So I think
Just bullshit right away.
Rage
think
at
that-
being in a body.
Yeah.
There
what
you
the
go,
fuck?
At being
And
not
that's-
cozy.
that's what we talk about when we
Exactly.
talk about rage.
Comfy
Like
pants.
the rage, shame, fear triad thing. Like that's what rage is. Rage is basically like the I didn't have a choice, but now I'm here, and fuck everything. Rage at the universe, and so I think that all 3 body types have a nostalgia for the womb, and they all approach it in a certain way. And 9 basically takes the attitude of like, open arms, like please hold me, world. Okay.
That's so funny to
And-
me for some reason.
Shush, Emeka. Wait your turn.
please hug me, world.
We're holding me right now. We'll hold you later.
I need snuggles, world.
Yes, exactly.
And the world does hug us. It returns the favor.
The delusion.
We are loved. We are popular. Attractive. Beautiful.
That's true. Cozy.
Cuddly.
Everyone wants to snuggle us.
Everyone.
Yeah, Josh,
wants
continue
our
with the
snuggles.
delusion of 9, please.
Yeah. So 9 says, "Please hold me, world," and what that means from the body center sensation point of view is basically, world, please provide me with good sensations. And
God, that's so my girlfriend.
Yeah, and then I get really, really fussy and mad when I don't get them.
Well, we should go to World
Yeah.
Grumpy.
I'm currently looking at Brian curled up in the couch, covered in a blanket, covered.
I have a blanket on my lap right now.
Comfy
Yeah, that's
cozy.
right. Yeah, so the whole 9 comfort-seeking, cozy-seeking thing. By the way, I want to make something clear that sensation is a whole thing to unpack. Like,
Yeah.
it's not just the 5 senses, which is a really outdated model of sensation.
Yeah, well said.
Aristotle actually came up with that over 2,000 years ago. So what I mean is like,
Aristotle, you're canceled.
yeah,
Fuck him.
sensation is
Whatever,
like,
John.
like right now, in terms of social instinct, all of us are having a sensory impact on each other, just being on this video call. And so there's like a whole subtle realm of sensation that is the sensory impact of people on each other, but there are also things like the temperature of the room and things like that. I mean, this is a whole, we could get into an instinctual conversation about this.
Like
Yeah.
resonance in the body, like what
Yes.
we're experiencing right now by seeing each other.
Yes, yeah. Or
Yeah.
I loved Alex's word, the inner tuning fork,
Yeah.
which is especially one, but I think that all the body types have something like this.
Mhm.
So basically, 9s are like, hold me, world. And attachment is a fundamentally open, porous, receptive stance to the world. And that's going to get mirrored by the 3 in the layer of gaze and the 6 in the layer of orientation. But in the layer of sensation here with 9, it's basically like, okay, hold me, world. And 9's strategy is, whatever the world is giving me, I'll make it work by numbing myself enough so that it works. And so 9 basically numbs itself in response to what the world is giving me and settles with it.
So there's significant numbing of sensation
Yes.
also.
Yeah.
To deal with all the overwhelm, all the,
Correct.
the absorbing
That's right. Yeah, 'cause
attachment input is taking
Yeah.
it all in.
Because
It's
9
too
wants
much yes to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you also have to have a cutoff.
Yeah, it's like 9 is wanting pleasant sensations, and it opens itself to receive them, and every once in a while bad sensations get in. And it doesn't want to close itself off because the outside world is the source of pleasant sensations. And so its strategy is to numb itself so the bad sensations don't affect it.
Well, kind of like it doesn't know how to cut itself off.
That's right.
It's like that is why like 9 is like the archetype of the types. It's like before you even know you can cut yourself off. Like, so numbing is sort of turning down the volume, or like, it is like a dissociative response, but it's like, yeah, there's no sense of knowing that you can. It's like not even an option.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's more that like we can't turn off selectively the way that we should, because there's like at least bringing in a personal, I feel like I have to be open because the yeses are out there, but I don't know how to filter out the no's, so I just have to be open.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the I know I've been shitting on the protecting, guiding, nurturing thing, but I want to bring it in just for 1 second because I think there's something relevant here. So the third option is sometimes given as the two things together, nurturing and protecting, guiding, but it's also sometimes called the holding environment. And
That makes sense.
there's a lot of different terminology that swims around here, but I think that the body center is fundamentally concerned with the holding environment, like what holds me, what touches me, what impacts me sensorially. That's holding. And you could also make an argument for the body center is concerned with protection. Also, it is the protecting milieu. How do I protect myself from? So the body center could be equated with the holding environment and the protecting function. And basically, Nine's way of protecting itself is through numbing in response to what the world is giving me. Okay, let's talk about 8. So 8 as a rejection type,
finally,
is instead of in radical contrast to the 9, which is open and receptive and porous, 8 is impenetrable and non-porous and opaque. And what the 8 is basically doing is saying, okay, world, anytime something like bad sensation gets in, that's what I feel rejected from. Like, fuck you, world. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to create my own holding environment by erecting a castle wall around me and only letting in what I let in through this drawbridge. And so anything that has the potential to have a sensory impact on me lands at the wall, and I choose whether or not to let it in. But so another way to put it is that 9 numbs itself in response to the world. 8 numbs itself preemptively before it goes into the world. And so the world can't get to it. Yeah.
So Josh and I, regularly hang out at this coffee shop to like work, and we were comparing our fixes and kind of like, because it's not the case that 8 doesn't sense anything, right? Like everybody senses, but like there's a certain orientation to, and Josh, you can help me like refine what I'm thinking, but, or clarify, but like there's a certain, like, so we went into this coffee shop and we both kind of broke down our sensory experience of how we oriented to walking into this coffee shop. And so, Josh with his 9 fix was talking about how he's just, and social instinct too, but he's like really absorbent of people's states and where they're at and their quality of energy. And for me, even though I'm a withdrawn type, and there's also social blindness in here, but there is a way, like, for example, we were talking and this guy kind of made a body language move, like he was annoyed with the quality of us talking. And, Josh had some kind of, like, what was your response to that? You like took note of it.
I mean, it just, I took note of it.
But yeah, you said like it affected you in a certain way, right? Mm-hmm. How did it affect you?
You could almost imagine that. I mean, it's like something hit me from the inside. Like it's almost like, imagine I'm a sponge in a tide pool. Some contaminant in the tide got inside like my innermost sponge pore and sort of moved me to the right.
So it's like it became included in your inner milieu.
Yes, that's right.
Whereas for me, I did register a little bit, and I was like, well, I'm just gonna fucking talk over him, like not even amplify my voice anymore, but just kind of like keep pushing, because I was like, I'm not gonna let that in. Like I'm like, and it was kind of a preconscious thing, but I saw he was annoyed, and I like was like, fuck it, like I don't care, or it was like I'm not gonna like I'm having conversation.
Right.
And then so tracing how I walked into the coffee shop, like I don't know Josh's experience, but I was recognizing like push into door, barista, I'm polite and stuff, but I'm just like, please give me coffee, go to the seat. I'm not taking in her feelings. I'm not taking in just, being with 9 fixers or Alexander or something like this. Like there's certain ways that I'll see them respond to things that I'm like kind of cutting out, and it's very transactional. And so it was like a, when they talk about the 8 fixation is objectification, right? It is kind of like a rendering of yourself as opaque to everything else, and therefore everything else has a kind of opaque blockiness to it, and that you're just kind of, pushing through an environment of blockiness. And so, one of the things I was It's kind of like one of the things that gets assigned 8 a lot, and I think there's something to this, but confidence, right?
Sure.
But it's not like, I know plenty of 8s that are very insecure. It's not that they're, but it's this way of orienting to the world where you're saying no to allowing certain sensations just on a preconscious level that makes my ego agenda something I can just kind of express in the world. And so often I think that, a lot of, I think, our views of self-esteem and things like that culturally come from a 9-fix point of view.
Yeah.
And so from a point of view of this, like 8-fix or whatever, 8 point type 8 or whatever, it's like, it's not so much confidence or it works differently, but it's like it looks confident from a sort of point of view because there's a lack of questioning the expression of whatever impulse I'm trying to enact. Does that make any sense?
Because attachment is what it is to be a human being.
Mm-hmm.
So to be automatically, structurally closed is incidentally confident and sort of ego strong or boundaried. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the confidence of, I could imagine like an attachment side going into a crowd and feeling the impact of people's what people say, like that stuff hitting you and you can't keep it out. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think the confidence of 8 is coming from that there's nothing stopping me, like because my boundaries are so protected that I only allow something to affect me if I wanted to. That's what it feels like. So why wouldn't I just expand myself?
Just go forward. Yeah.
I can. So which means I can go in the middle of a crowd and do whatever I want to do because it's like whatever you're saying at any point, I can sort of depersonalize what's happening in the sense that you're not speaking to me, or whatever you said doesn't have anything to do with me. Like what you're feeling, like there's a sense of real separateness that can get to an extreme point where you can just do or say whatever you want and not really register. It doesn't really affect you, or it doesn't really touch you.
Separateness is the word, I think. Or go ahead, John.
Yeah, I mean, another demonstration of this kind of thing that I'm curious for the 9-fixers to describe. But like in New York, you get out of a subway train on a busy station, and everybody's going in 20 different directions because it's all disorganized and stuff like this. And I do this thing where when somebody gets in my way, or when we're like, it's like we come to those choice points where it's like I could move or they could move. My thing is always they move. Like I'm always going to be there's always those kind of like door openings or whatever, not literal door openings, but those openings where it's like one of us could go some way, and I'm like, I'm going to make them be the one that has to make that choice to move. Like that's kind of just like a default thing. And so I kind of just like barrel through, and I like people hit me and I hit them and stuff like this. But it's kind of like I'm not going to give them space to be like, where are we going to flow together? And so I don't know if that's just a New York thing, or if that's like my 8-fix, or if that's what. But I'm curious from the 9-fix point of view, because I can see 9-fixers taking in people more.
I want to interject one thing about this. So part of what this model, I think, is about is that, and let me get at it this way. So the previous formulation of object relations, I think, is basically taking a framework that only an adult with their cognitive capacities that have been developed in adulthood could have, and superimposing it on a precognitive infant experience in terms of, like, for example, just like your sensory awareness of your environment. The reason I bring that up is because one of the difficulties of having this conversation about sensation is that it very quickly and easily becomes a conversation about how I see myself and how I make choices to move through the world. And what I'm saying is that the layer of sensation is pre-identity. And so it exists at a level of consciousness that is prior to the way you see yourself. And it's not that you can't excavate it and then ultimately make different choices in it in terms of your relation to sensation. But what I'm saying is, like, I think that your sense of yourself, or your choice not to have people, or not to move out of people's way and have people move out of your way, is a kind of almost like reverse rationalization based on your default sensory experience of the world. You see what I'm saying?
Reverse route. Can you kind of unpack what that?
Yeah. What I mean is, I think that first of all, the body sensor is just absolutely fundamental. It's like it is the fundamental thing. Doesn't matter if you're body type or not. Like your orientation to the sensory surround is fundamental. And what I'm hearing you say is that your experience of yourself as a sensory object is just that, as a sensory object. And so your experience, you're kind of like a billiards ball moving through a world with other billiards balls. And as a person with a 9 fix, my experience of the world is that I am not a billiards ball, I am a sponge. And the way other people's presence, when they are in my presence, their energy is already inside me, whether I want it or not.
That makes me like my stomach turn. I did that.
Alexander. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Just like that's like they're like just like whoa, no, I don't want. Like,
so in other words, I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, your framing of I choose to make other people go around me as opposed to going around them. I'm saying that it's not. I'm saying it's probably at the lowest level of consciousness, at the sensory level, not actually a choice.
Yeah. You know,
yeah,
I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
Whereas, in other words, that's
a resulting behavior from an earlier sensorially reality.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And I really wanted to make that point because from this developmental point of view, I think it's really useful to have this understand where things are coming from in the developmental hierarchy, or like what place they're arising from in consciousness. You know, like the ladder of consciousness, you might say, or the Russian doll nested thing. Yeah. So.
And just to say something real quick about that's one way you can deal with it. Like I've noticed in certain situations where I don't realize or register people enough and I just end up bumping into them. Or if I am registering people, my tendency is to want to maintain a visible distance so that other people don't bump into me. So my, I guess, rejection response is that I'm not navigating who's going right or left because the idea that some stranger could even touch me is disgusting. I'm more likely to make sure that doesn't even happen, or there's not even a possibility. I try to make sure that any potential action by someone can't affect me, regardless of whether they go right or left, or they just completely spaz out. So that could be another like response to it, where maybe sometimes I'm not aware and I just end up barreling through people, but for the most part, I just want to make sure that people don't ever touch me.
Yeah, and that's interesting rejection itself, as I'm characterizing it, is just this non-porous boundary, and from a 9-fix attachment, open porous point of view, it's just kind of not possible to not have things affect you. Like, and that gets into a whole thing about inner work and how we can use this framework. But maybe we talk about one.
Yeah, let's do it.
This out. Yeah. So. Let's see, to get here, I would say that, so 9 is open and receptive and numbs itself in response to what the world gives it. 8 pre-numbs itself and exerts a kind of outward flowing from the center of itself, like force field that keeps the world at bay to create the castle wall. I'm suggesting that 1 is basically open and porous like a 9, but cannot numb itself. And so it
that
basically
ensures frustration.
And that's what ensures frustration. So think of 1 like a sponge, but with a sandpaper interior, where literally any particle in the tide pool gets inside it and feels like a scratch. And so the tide pool has to be absolutely pure for the 1 to feel settled. And so the 1 externalizes their settledness to the tide pool. And so that's what ultimately creates in the 1 identity structure a sense of an obligation to fix what's wrong in my environment, because it's affecting me at a sensory level in a way that I can't deal with, because I can't settle until it's fixed.
So can you flesh that out as an example?
Well, yeah, I think that the Alex interview example is a really good one from the point of view of like she can't like. Let me get at it this way. So the fundamental concern, I think, in the body sensor is to try to recapture the womb state of being settled. You know, 9 says, okay, I'll settle with whatever's here by knowing myself. 8 says, I'll create my own holding environment so nothing can get in so that I can settle. And 1 basically says, in order to settle, I have to get everything exogenous to me right. I have to, and right is a really loaded and subjective term, but but I have to get the outside world to a place where it's not irritating me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one is hypersensitive to irritants and contaminants in their environment, and I think probably depending on their instinctual stack, what they're oriented to as contaminants and irritants are going to be different. For Alex, who's a self-pres sexual one, the thing that was mostly irritating to her was, when there's like dust on the shelf, or when there's shit disorganized in her view, and somehow she can't like get comfortable. It's kind of like fussy baby energy. I can't get comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just can't get comfortable. And when a one grows up into an adult, and they have power to like fix things and try to get themselves comfortable by fixing what's outside them. And also, I think part of the one identity structure becomes, don't be a person who contributes to the kind of environment that can continue to irritate me.
Excellent. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
So the constricted rigidity of one comes from that point of view, and the idea of one having morals and principles is probably on some level fair and true, but the principles are a result of this sensory reaction to the world.
Yes.
They're a mental constellation of what is right based on my sensory response.
Yeah. Damn, interesting. And so, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking about that, the idea of like one's forming their sense of like principles based on that. And I was thinking about it for 8, and how if 8 is looking at the world as I'm creating my own world that's protected from that protects me from certain vulnerabilities. So the 8 can sort of build up a personal ideology that I judge people on their ability to be reliable agents within the wall. So if you're someone who you talk about 8s when they talk about loyalty, it's not from the sense of mental orientation like the 6. It's coming from a sense of, are you going to be a liability to the wall?
Yes,
for sure. Yeah.
So this gets to a whole discussion about what is a fixation, and like from a body center point of view, how do we hold symbolic abstractions? Let me say it in a different way. Like if we were talking about someone who's not here right now, Emeka as an 8, like you would be holding that person or evaluating the symbol of that person in relation to your fundamental 8 concern of, is this person going to violate me or not?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And as a 9, I hold the symbolic like let's talk about, I don't know, your mom or something like that. It's like as a 9, we hold, like my mom's not present right now. She's not physically, she's not having an immediate impact. And so in this conversation, she is a symbolic abstraction. And the way that we hold symbolic abstractions is in relation to the fundamental concern of our type. And when we're talking about the body center as a 9, it's like, when I call to mind this symbolic abstraction of mom, is this person requiring life energy exertion from me? Is this person unsettling me or settling me?
Tracking levels of agreement or alignment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then probably so 9s are known for like kind of idealizing certain people and cartoonifying them, because I would assume it's because to do that is numbing certain features of the way that symbol is held, so that it can be comfortable within that sensorial milieu. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Yeah. Or another way I think of it is like 9s will take a snapshot of a moment in time when this person was like sensorially so pleasant, and then we'll recall that and hold that symbolic abstraction of that person in their minds as a way to soothe themselves.
Fuck yeah.
But also when they're in relationship to that person in the present moment, they can sometimes be thinking of that person in the cartoonified symbolic frozen moment in time that they used to have.
Interesting.
As opposed to relating to the person right here, right now.
That's totally a numbing agent.
Reality. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That brings up a really good point in that we've talked about this before, the nested quality of trifix. So me being 5 fixed, is coming from the point of view of 8ness is different from John's relationship to his 5 fix, because it's the core fixation is the thing. So it's the head center in it's through the lens of your core center. So the way that I do 5 is coming from the point of view of evaluating what, the capacity of something to violate my own, separate world that I've created, or not, or yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, could you do like a breakdown on Emeka and I's relationship to our 5 fixes from the point of view of being an 8 and a 4?
Yes. Okay.
On the spot right now. Go.
Okay,
and write a chapter of a book.
Let me just say,
Yeah, dance, pony, dance.
I haven't fully worked out how like, for example, John and Emeka, if you both had 6 fixes, how that would be different from what I'm about to say. But here's what I'm about to say. So I think that the way that, okay, pretend that I wasn't here right now, and that I'm the symbol you're each holding in your heads.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Emeka, the way that you're holding the symbolic abstraction of Josh in your head is basically as an evaluation of is the symbol of Josh, is Josh like cool to let in beyond the wall, or not, or what parts of Josh are allowed to go within the wall or not, right? Josh is trustable in this category, but not trustable in this category.
We can dissect him.
100%. That's exactly what it is. Everybody, it's got like, I'm good with this 20% of you. The rest of it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And John, so you're a 4, and in this model, what I'm suggesting is that 4 is frustrated with gaze, or the way that people pay attention, and the way that the way that they give you attention, but also the way that they give attention to anything. And so I think that you hold me as a symbolic abstraction in your head in relation to this concern. Like, you're evaluating me based on how does Josh pay attention?
Yep.
And when he's with me, is he paying attention to me in the right way, or to anything that his attention goes to? Is his quality of attention good or bad according to my standard?
Yeah, exactly. It's like we talked about this, and it was sort of like I am not so frustrated with the way Josh sees the world, and the way that Josh holds the Enneagram, and the way that Josh, the values Josh has because of X, Y, and Z. Like that's it's like, do you see the world in a way that I think has meaning?
Yeah, I'll say this, that I think the thing I told when we discussed this from the body point of view, I look at people as sort of like people can be sort of like experiential instruments, and from the 5 fix point of view, it's like everyone has the capacity to generate some kind of insight just by their presence in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes people come to us or join up with us, and I can sense that their presence is disrupting the sort of experiential flow of discovery that could happen. Mm-hmm. And so when I think of Josh, it's like whenever Josh comes around, new interesting insights happen. So Josh is a good addition to the wall. And so I can look at people based on what they generate, good or bad, in addition to everything else. And where it seems like, John, you are more concerned. The gaze it's more concerned as to like what the it's more of a quality of sincerity, or like looking at like John's quality of intention, if that makes any sense. It's not about the results or the experiential, like what's happening when he's here. Like, you're getting to the heart of like what Josh is trying to do, or what he's intending.
Yeah, exactly.
And his value as a person.
Yeah, like I'm not it's not as results focused, but it's kind of like, where's your heart at?
Yeah.
And it's not like, we're talking about the symbol of gaze. And I keep trying to make a gay joke, but I just can't find it.
I know, I keep thinking about that too.
But it's not even how someone's looking at me. Like that could be part of it. But it's like, I'm as frustrated, like, there's people that I just can like not engage with, but I can like have a stamp of gay approval on their gaze or something, and I'm like, they're a cool person, And so I think that that's important too, is that it's not just, do you see me right or not? Because there's a lot of different types that can go into, and I'm not saying that is or is not for, but just that layer of symbol, or of, not symbol, of the gaze does have this sense of, their intent, their quality of heart. Yeah. Can I see them as a real person? And so, like, I mean, we talked about this, Josh, but like, you're not the kind of dude that I would normally be like, yeah, let's be friends when we first met. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And when we first met, but I was like, I just like this guy because I could just see your heart. I could see where you're at, where you're coming from, And so it wasn't about the effect you produce or something like that. For me, it was this thing about what I see your identity as.
Yeah. Very interesting. And by the way, I appreciate what you guys said. Thank you. That was a 3.
You did it, Josh.
Yeah, you're getting the good gaze.
You got the gaze.
Attached to the gaze.
The 8 and the 4 walls. You've
earned a few gold
something.
stars on your lapel.
Emeka and John don't hate you. That's a good.
I mean, that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually, because there are people that I will... their results actually suck.
Right.
But I will see their value. Mm-hmm. And that's gotten me in trouble.
Right.
Sure.
And then, especially if my value assessment is wrong and they're producing all kinds of shitty results.
Right.
That's still kind of like, it's hard for me to tap in. It's getting easier for me, but like to toggle between the centers in relation to other people, whereas I can just stay in my dominant center in relation to people. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I overreact to, I wouldn't say overreact, but I'm always tracking what effect people are having in our group or on us. Like what the before and after when this person was introduced, I'm very sensitive to that. And, y'all know that I have a kill list, and every time somebody does something, but I'm just like, I'm gonna have to, delete you at some point, and it always ends up being the case because it's like like this person's just a problem, and they're gonna continue to be a problem. So yeah.
Damn. As we're talking about this, like I'm realizing, like I've like had an impression of somebody that I held at a certain layer, so to speak, but it like both my lack of social instinct and that I'm body last. Like not seeing their results.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting. That's a big deal. Yeah, very interesting.
And it's also just to say that I can get misled by results too, because I can see the potential that someone has to, add to the mix, and I have to eventually catch up to like what is the intent? Because just because you have the capacity to add to the mix doesn't mean. And we've had plenty of examples lately in the last year of people who could have helped us do so many things, and that's why we wanted to engage with them. But then you find out that they've got some fucked up intent, like what they're really going after doesn't actually align with us. And so I can get caught up doing that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think this framework has I think that it's a really good way to clarify what we mean by fixation. Like the original formulation, like each type has a passion and a fixation, and I don't have it like fully worked out or anything, but I think it's a really good investigative trail.
It's where you're stuck in relation to these layers.
Yes,
where you're fixed.
That's right.
And so, like even saying I have a 1 fix or an 8 fix or a 9 fix, where are you fixed in that symbolic layer?
Oh, actually, what I was referring to, let me be clear, is like, how Russ, Hudson, or like kind of, I don't know, anyone sort of mainstream Enneagram would talk about like the fixation of 8 is objectification.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, this
goes back to
like,
Chauza.
It goes back to Chauza, exactly. Or the fixation of 3 is image management or whatever, or deception or whatever you call it. It's like, those are really useful words to get at certain things, but I think that when you're talking about like what does being an 8 do to how does it flavor your relationship to symbolic abstraction in the mental center is a slightly different question than those words like objectification, image management are trying to answer.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah,
this opens things up in a very profound, but in simpler way, that it makes it easier to work with the fixes, because it's like now I'm looking at my 5 and 4 fix very differently, because it's like, oh shit, like my relationship to symbol and the gaze is all coming from sort of like the wall and the environment that I'm creating for myself. And it's not just the literal environment, the psychological environment, because I think if I see people affecting us psychologically, and I look at all of you as affecting me psychologically, so if there's someone in your life that's affecting you, that has a residual effect on me. So there's kind of a way that the aids can sort of expand my environment by all the people that have the ability to affect me. So, you know, I think about what's going on in all you guys' lives, because if something's going down for you, that's touching me as well. So that can be the sort of, it just keeps expanding, as in how many elements in my environment, psychologically, emotionally, physically, that I need to control so that I'm not touched by anything outside.
Yeah, this is also really interesting because I feel like it can make communication happen better. Like, for example, Emeka, if you were to be like, this person fucking sucks, and you're talking to me or somebody, you know, with a different milieu, whatever, and I'm like, I don't feel like they suck.
Right.
You can instead say, hey, they're really impacting you in this way that I'm observing that I don't think you're registering. And that has an entire, and it's like, oh, yeah, you know, and that has entirely different things. So it's like, I don't know, it can open up a lot.
It helps me know that to better communicate what I'm seeing, because it seems so obvious to me when I think that someone is a problem, I'm registering like 3, 4, 5 different things that have stacked up for me to be able to say that. And so I'm realizing that I need to break down, like, this is what they did, and this led to this thing, which could lead to this other thing, which could lead to this other thing, which means it's going to be a problem a month, 3 months, 6 months from now. Let's, you know, and then when it happens, and I'm like, I fucking told you that it was going to play out this way, you know, so I have to do more, you know, just, it's not obvious, because I'm registering so many like infractions and saying, okay, this is how it's going to go.
At this point, something happens like amongst people, and then I'm like, I didn't see that coming, or you know, or like, why did Emeka take this action? I'm like, Emeka, what's like the download? And you're like, here. You've got a list of compiled things, and so now at this point, I just know, like, okay, that's what. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's not ever actually as impulsive as it seems.
Right.
Wow. I also feel like Emeka's going to be harder on himself about not catching things than anyone else will ever be.
That's true.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, every time you're like, I should have known that. I'm like, I would have never known that.
So, yes. Josh, sorry. You were saying something?
I was going to say, one other thing. One thing that I am excited about this framework is that, like John, our last discussion around how it clarifies or gives a new way of investigating your relationship to your object relational affects. It's like, let me say what I mean by that. So, like, first of all, as a triple attachment type, myself, and also Nancy and Alexandra, I think you're going to relate to this. It's like just the awareness that I am open, porous, receptive, being impacted at, against my will at every layer of my organism. And it's very difficult to turn that off. And especially, so you think about attachment as this like almost non-boundaried thing. Rejection is a fully boundaried thing, and frustration is like open, but aware of how it's constantly being contaminated and trying to decontaminate itself. Mm-hmm. And so attachment and frustration are both kind of open. And so it's kind of what it does for me is it kind of clarifies, like, let's just take the body sensor for example. So like I have a 9 with a 1 wing fix. I don't have any rejection in the body sensor, and so it's very difficult for me to have a boundary against the sensory environment. Mm. You know, or like John, we were talking the other day. Like, what about a 9 with an 8 wing? You have like attachment and rejection. What is that missing? Frustration is the object relational affect that allows you to determine your location in relation to something. Mm. So it's like it's the object relational affect of individuation.
Mm. That's interesting.
And you know, pretend you have I don't know, 8-wing-7 or something as a body fix, it's like no attachment. And so what does that mean? It's like a hyper separate thing. And so missing like the fundamental attachment, the healthy attachment thing of like being open to be affected by something.
Yeah.
You know, like John, we were talking about our just like how you were saying it was kind of like difficult for you sometimes to experience like to know someone else's location in a certain sense. And like for me, especially as a triple attachment type, but just hanging out in the body sensor still, like it's impossible for me not to know someone else's location energetically.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I'm a sponge. I can't help but be open to it, and like your energy is in the tide pool already.
Yeah.
So it's already inside me. Like I can already tell. But if you're a rejection body fix, then it takes some effort to actually sense where another person is at, or open yourself to be able to sense. I find that fascinating.
Yeah,
Josh is constantly inside of us.
Something to kind of expand on that. You guys were using the example of that guy at the coffee shop giving you body language that was annoyed. To me, that registers as loud as him. He might as well have said something to you. He might as well have like shoved you. It's that loud. Yeah. He wasn't intending for it to like travel, but he was.
Wow.
Whereas I'm like, yeah, gonna drown him out. Like, oh, he's like showing he's annoyed or something. All right, let's just drown it so that sensation does not affect my thinking and my discussion with Josh or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would want to drown it out.
To me, it's as loud as directly being told you're fucking annoying me.
Yeah. Yeah, I would want to drown it out, but that's not an option.
Yeah. Yes.
And and not even taking in, like, I'm just like, oh, the guy's annoyed, whatever, doesn't matter. You know, like, just keep going or whatever.
I will have an emotional reaction about that. My emotional reaction will be, fuck you, but it will be there.
So I've tell me what you think about this, Josh. Just thinking about like, all right, David and I are the kings of fighting with people online, right? And so, you know, from my point of view, right, like you be like, what's motivating me is frustration with gaze with the 5 fix, right? Like the way people are seeing things and understanding things and engaging with this thing that I find meaningful, the Enneagram. And, you know, and then the 5 fix thing of it makes me articulate myself. It's interesting. It's fun, whatever. But David, being a 7 fix 9, David, tell me if I'm wrong, but is it kind of like the attachment thing is that you are kind of affected by all these impressions, and because of their nonsense, lack of understanding, they're boring to you? Like, you know what I mean? Like 7 fix boring affecting you?
Yeah, I've been thinking for the last 10 or 15 minutes about launching into my sort of whole version of, you know, I'm definitely the sponge, right? I was going to sort of articulate it through, say, the example that you were giving earlier, John, of say, being in a subway crowd or whatever. Because I've got, you know, a 1-wing 7 and 4, and because I'm SPSX, which is, well, just so kind of insular. Like my fixes are really exempt and self-absorbed, self-involved, and my instinctual stacking is also. And so, in some sense, the sponge is that I'm expecting the world to align with my flow. Okay? Like I expect that that my energetic, you know, directionality or whatever, everybody else ought to be aligning with it in a way. And that's how the agreement looks. That's how the 9-ish, I don't know, holism and yes is there's an expectation that colored by 7-4 and SPSX of that everything ought to, you know, go with my flow and is sort of a part of my world. I mean, there's the self-aggrandizing side of 9 is like, this is supposed to be my universe or world or something like that. And so then when you talk about it in terms of, let's say, smaller environments such as the Enneagram world and online and so forth, when people are spouting bad information or whatever, it's you idiot, you're not aligning with my particular, signatured version of how this environment should be. And so it's wrong, and you shouldn't be doing this to me, kind of, is a piece of it. Why did you get inside my world in a way with this sandpaper that's bad and wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting because when I'm trying to look at or figure out like why you guys are so motivated to correct that stuff, because for me, inevitably, if I don't think that I can immediately change or fix a problem, I will just move that problem outside the wall. Like it's so, like, for example, the coffee shop, if the guy is if I know the guy's annoyed with me, my reflex might be that there's no way that this guy, anything he's doing, has any relation to me. Not to say that I'm going to deflect and say that, oh, he could be annoyed at somebody else. It's like, well, unless you're going to fight me, there's nothing that matters about what you're expressing. Unless you make some move to enter this world or speak to me or anything, like, nothing you do matters. Like, who cares, So it's problems. If I don't feel like I can do something about a problem, then I have to move it outside of what I consider to be real or anything to even think about. So
it's like on the level of sensation, though, right? Like, what's the action of rejection, right? Because it's like, what is the way sensation is being moved or life force is being organized that puts somebody out?
I guess it's like a sense of feeling nothing or numb. It's almost like if I don't care about something or someone, I could watch terrible things happen and not feel anything because, like my small world of people that I care about, like if anything happens to you guys, I really care. But like, there's a sense of like, it's hard to really see other people as real human beings who are not within my circle of people I care about. Or maybe that's just a reflex of this isn't anything that matters if it's outside of that circle. So I think initially with the people mistyping and people posting any like bad Enneagram stuff, I was hooked into that and trying to see what I could do. But once I realized that trying to convince people doesn't necessarily change it, I was like, well, I can just focus on building my own world, building an contained universe of stuff where good stuff can happen and only care about that. I don't really care about what happens outside of the world that we've created with our group and everything else.
One other way to put what you're saying, Emeka, is that as an 8, you are constructing your own holding environment.
Right.
And only what is within the walls of the holding environment that you've constructed has an impact on you, and you have preemptively, in a sense, whether it's chosen or pre-choice, gone numb to everything that's outside the wall. And so
I'm very reactive to problems within our sphere.
Yeah.
As in all of you guys and anything that affects you, I take action on that. But, just people saying random shit outside of our group is kind of like irrelevant.
I wanted to go back to John's question to me about like the 7 fix thing is an aspect of the 7 fix and what's happening online is that in the mental center, I've got unconditional positive self-regard, right? So you all should be able to see my way is obviously the right way to see the Enneagram, right? It's that kind of thing. So, and it's also, these people don't even have anything interesting or new to say anyway.
Yeah.
So they just need to listen to me.
For sure. Yeah.
That's part of it.
That's also, so as a 9 core attachment with triple frustration adjacency, like the whole triple frustration thing is like knowing your location in relation to this thing that's happening. And 9 is basically being affected by anything that's entering my world. So it's like a profound receptive affectedness that you're constantly finding yourself in relation to in a frustrated way.
Right. So I'm needing to scratch back at all these people online because they're scratching me from the inside.
Now, this is really, this is a really big deal. A much clearer, more insightful. I think a lot of people will be able to use this way of looking at the centers and object relations immediately because it's really intuitive and clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to like the ways that we'll unpack this and like, like what we're talking about with all the nuances of trifix, right? Like getting really, really specific about the layer of sensation gaze symbol, how we get stuck in them, how they're interfacing with each other, how to unpack that stuff, how to communicate from those kind of points of view. And I don't know. I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Thanks for indulging us.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like the sponge analogy was my favorite so far. I can really like have it in my brain now. It makes a lot of sense, especially with the 1.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta go squeeze out my sponge.
Yeah, you do.
True. I need good sensations always.
I just want to be squeezed out.
Give them to me.
Yeah, I'm interested to see like
good sensations.
how this might apply to what different insights we might be able to pull out from looking at this from a typing perspective. If this makes things simpler, I think you talked to Joseph and he said he wanted you to come on to DAA and see if we could give some video examples that could help flesh this out. Maybe.
Oh, that would be cool.
So,
totally.
Yeah.
Cool.
Check out John and Josh's classes this week because this will go live in a couple of days.
TheEnneagramSchool.com.
Yeah.
EnneagramSchool.com. Yeah, and we'll get more into also the other centers, the gaze and symbol.
Yeah,
we'll get into the gaze.
Nancy.
Into the gaze.
The 2 beautiful fuckboys of the Enneagram are going to get into the gaze.
Yeah. The image types love the gaze.
Alexander's Puerto Rican mom says, Los gays.
Yeah. Los gays. Mira los gays.
Mira.
It's so funny.
No, this is really helpful though. Like it helps me like, all right, this is what I actually need to communicate. What's going on for me when I say someone is bad? Like how did I arrive?
Oh my God.
There's a particulate in the tide pool.
This is why we see 8s as assholes because they're not communicating that whole thing that came before the shut off.
Interesting. Yeah,
they're not painting the story that we need to make that assumption that they are particulates in the tide pool.
Right.
Because it seems sudden, but it's definitely not sudden. Like it's like I'm tracking. It feels like I'm tracking everyone that comes to this group because everyone that comes to this group has the potential to impact me or eventually get to me.
You're pretty much the only one doing that.
So it's like I'm in some way like evaluating people long term to see your move, like the life cycle of people coming to this group and getting closer and closer and closer, and if somebody does this or somebody does that. So by the point that when I get to the point where this person sucks, there's a long tail of shit that I've been paying attention to that I forget that no one else knows about.
So my unconditional positives
there too, I think.
Go ahead.
That's 5-fix stuff there too, I think, for you, Emeka. Like not showing your work in a sense, or like like everything is contained inside, and then once it's obvious to you, it's just this is
right. No, that's a good point. It's rejection of symbol.
Yeah.
My unconditional positive self-regard has to mention that this whole thing we're talking about with 8 reiterates my overlaps thing, which is actually revealing more and more stuff, and in this context, like 8 overlaps, which for the listener is where I put on the Enneagram symbol, I put the 3 instincts and the 6 instinctual stackings onto the hexad types, and SPSO is 8, and so you can see if SP is, let's say, a wall or a barrier around a social group. I mean, that's exactly what we've been describing.
Yeah,
is that 8 is acting as this wall, and it's it's got that social energy in the sense of like everything Emeka was saying earlier, where it's not just us, but our connections to other people and other people and other people that are affecting what's happening inside the castle gate walls. Yeah. So, thank you very much.
Y'all are welcome. Is all I'm going to say.
So thank you, Josh, but especially thank you, David.
Thank you.
He's all-knowing and all-powerful by his booklet.
Yes. Pay attention to everything I say.
Anything else?
All right.
No, I thought that was great.
Bed.
I remember getting
is
chills the first time he explained like attachment in the specific levels. It's just like a new way to be horrified by my trifix. Just like triple exposed to gaze, sensation, and symbol. I was like, God, I have like no chance. Cool.
Yeah.
It's delicious. I just love it.
It's also cool to look at this from the point of view of like the instinctual drives and combining these two things together. Because I would imagine like a self-pres 8 would have more of a literal sort of boundary to how this affects my my livelihood or my well-being. It thinks for me as a sexual 8, it's more that I think of people as sort of like agents of like potential creativity or insight, and those things can change everything. So like I look
metamorphosis.
Like I see Josh, like you just come in with stuff that's flipped a lot of new things for us, and so my sexual instinct is like Josh is like a really cool addition to the mix, and so I tend to see people. It's like the music mix. It's kind of like this new song is like really fucking doing something for us, And so I could. Yeah, go ahead.
Especially
Josh
with
is just winning. Josh is just winning right here. This is a good experience for Joshy boy.
There's an entire inner gospel
Eating
choir
it up.
singing Hallelujah right now. So
We're going to get tired of winning with Josh.
Especially Emeka, your sexual instincts 8, but with a 4 and 5 fix, right? Because that's giving you more of like as you always put it, sexual interestingness. But coming from a lot more conceptual place than a lot of 8s would have. Like a lot of 8s wouldn't maybe give a shit about, some new concept or something, right? Like having these 5 fix and 4 fixes.
Yeah, people are like carriers of ideas, and just thinking of some of the people that we've met this year who just their presence introduced new ways of looking at things. Like,
totally.
Like Kristen's going to be here next week to talk about dream work. That's like been really cool.
Yes.
So it's like looking at the fixes as sort of shaping how one might judge people, and so I've realized that I tend to judge people on their ability to generate new interesting insights.
I'm terrified.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for being on.
That was amazing.
Yeah, thanks, Josh.
Yeah, that was great.
Thanks to our wizard. And I gotta go because
I need bed.
socialed out.
Yeah, everybody look at Nancy right now. How she's.
Are you sure you're not a 9?
She's just gathering the womb feeling, collecting those good sensations. Yeah, it's clear you've attached to a 9, Nancy.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
You were talking earlier about Brian, about looking over and Brian's like in a blanket, and then I look over and I'm like, oh, what are you saying? Look at you.
Brian is you. And
By the way, I
Brian.
sent a picture of him to the group chat. It's beautiful. You need to look at
Okay.
it. Okay, well,
All right.
Y'all.
Good
Later,
night.
y'all.
Cool.
All right, guys.
Later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.